The cold wind whipped through the narrow alleyways of London, swirling the mist that clung to the cobblestones like a ghostly shroud. It was a night that seemed to carry secrets on the breeze, and for Harry Dresden, it was the beginning of everything. He huddled in his thin coat, trying to keep the chill from biting too deeply into his bones as he hurried through the dimly lit streets. The orphanage wasn't far, just beyond the corner, where the old gas lamp still flickered with a faint, eerie glow. But tonight, something felt different. Something in the air. Something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. Harry pulled his coat tighter and quickened his pace. He had always been a bit of an outsider, even among the other orphans. There was something about him that made people uneasy. Something in his dark, stormy eyes that hinted at things unspoken. The other kids whispered about him when they thought he couldn't hear, spinning wild tales about curses and dark magic. He never paid them much mind, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't entirely wrong. As he rounded the corner, Harry's foot caught on something, sending him sprawling to the ground. He groaned, pushing himself up on his hands and knees, his palms scraped and stinging. As he looked back to see what had tripped him, his breath caught in his throat. Perched on the edge of a broken brick was a raven. But this was no ordinary bird. Its feathers were as black as the midnight sky, glistening with an unnatural sheen. Its eyes, pale and milky, stared at him with an unsettling intelligence. The raven cocked its head to one side, as if assessing him, and then, with a slow, deliberate movement, it extended one of its wings. Clutched in its talons was a letter. Harry blinked, unsure whether he was dreaming. But the sting of the cold on his cheeks and the sharp pain in his scraped palms told him this was real. Cautiously, he reached out and took the letter from the raven's grasp. The bird gave a low, throaty caw, as if in approval, before it flapped its wings and disappeared into the mist. For a moment, Harry just stood there, the letter clutched in his hand, his heart pounding in his chest. The envelope was thick and heavy, made of parchment that felt ancient beneath his fingers. His name was written on the front in elegant flowing script, Harry Dresden. With trembling hands, Harry tore open the envelope and pulled out the letter inside. The paper was old, the ink dark and rich, and as his eyes scanned the words, he felt a strange, tingling sensation in the pit of his stomach. Dear Mr. Dresden, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into the Arcanum Academy for Mages. Your presence has been requested at the Academy on the first day of the new moon. Please follow the instructions enclosed within this letter. Yours sincerely, Professor Ethelwold, Headmaster, Arcanum Academy. Harry read the letter again, and then a third time, disbelief warring with a growing sense of excitement. Arcanum Academy? He had never heard of such a place. But then again, his life had never been what one might call ordinary. Strange things happened around him, things that couldn't be explained. Perhaps this letter was the explanation he had been searching for all his life. But what did it mean? Mages, the new moon, an academy hidden somewhere in the world. Harry's thoughts raced as he clutched the letter to his chest, trying to make sense of the impossible. He had no family, no connections to the world beyond the orphanage. How had they found him? And more importantly, why? Oi, Dresden, what are you standing out here for? The voice broke through Harry's thoughts, and he turned to see Tom, one of the older boys from the orphanage, sauntering down the street. Tom was a brute, the kind of boy who enjoyed throwing his weight around. He had a gang of followers who were just as cruel, and Harry had learned early on to avoid them whenever possible. None of your business, Tom, Harry muttered, tucking the letter into his coat pocket. Tom's eyes narrowed as he approached. What's that you've got there? Something you're hiding from the rest of us? Leave me alone, Harry said, trying to edge past him. But Tom was quicker, grabbing Harry by the arm and yanking him back. Hand it over, Dresden, Tom snarled. Or do I need to teach you another lesson? The last time Tom had decided to teach Harry a lesson, he'd ended up with a black eye and bruised ribs. But Harry wasn't about to let that happen again. He could feel the letter burning against his chest, a reminder that something had changed, something that gave him the strength to stand up for himself. Let go of me, Tom, Harry said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. I'm warning you, Tom sneered. Or what? You think you're better than the rest of us. You're just a little freak, Dresden, and I'm going to... Before Tom could finish, a strange thing happened. The streetlight above them flickered and then burst, plunging the alley into darkness. A cold wind swept through the alley, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that made Tom release Harry's arm and step back in surprise. Harry could feel something building inside him, something powerful and dark. His heart raced as he tried to control it, but the sensation was overwhelming. It was as if a part of him, long dormant, was waking up, something ancient and dangerous. "Stay away from me," Harry said, his voice barely more than a whisper, but it carried a weight that made Tom hesitate. For a moment, they stared at each other, the tension crackling in the air like static. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the moment passed. The wind died down, the darkness lifted, and Tom, shaken, took a step back. "Fine," Tom spat, his bravado faltering. "Keep your stupid letter. But this isn't over, Dresden." He turned and hurried away, his footsteps echoing in the empty street. Harry watched him go, his heart still pounding in his chest, and only then did he realize he was shaking. Whatever had just happened, it was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. Taking a deep breath, Harry pulled the letter from his pocket and reread it under the faint glow of the distant streetlights. The words seemed to pulse with a life of their own, calling to him, urging him to accept the invitation. Arcanum Academy for Mages. It sounded like something out of a dream, a place where he might finally belong, a place where he could find answers to the questions that had haunted him for as long as he could remember. But the idea of leaving the orphanage, of venturing into the unknown, filled him with equal parts excitement and dread. As Harry walked back to the orphanage, the letter clutched tightly in his hand. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something much bigger than he could possibly imagine. He didn't know what awaited him at Arcanum Academy, but one thing was certain: his life would never be the same. The next morning, Harry could barely contain his anticipation. The instructions enclosed with the letter had been simple but mysterious. Be at King's Cross Station at midnight on the night of the new moon. A spectral raven would meet him there to guide him to the academy. Harry had never been to King's Cross before, but he had heard the stories from the other boys at the orphanage. It was a massive train station, bustling with people from all walks of life, a place where you could lose yourself in the crowd and disappear without a trace. The idea of going there alone, in the dead of night, was terrifying, but the pull of the letter was stronger than his fear. As the day wore on, Harry found himself watching the clock more than usual, counting down the hours until he could leave. He kept the letter hidden under his pillow, taking it out every now and then to reassure himself that it was real. Each time he read it, he felt the same thrill of excitement mixed with apprehension. When the time finally came, Harry slipped out of the orphanage unnoticed, making his way through the darkened streets toward King's Cross. The city was quieter than usual, the fog thickening as the night deepened. By the time he reached the station, his nerves were frayed, but his resolve was unshaken. The station was nearly empty at this hour, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by an eerie stillness. Harry hesitated at the entrance, scanning the shadows for any sign of the spectral raven. But there was nothing, only the distant sound of a train whistle echoing through the cavernous hall. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if it had all been a mistake? What if the letter had been some kind of cruel joke? But as he stood there, unsure of what to do next, a soft rustling sound caught his attention. Turning, Harry saw the raven perched on one of the station's iron beams, its pale eyes fixed on him. It cawed softly, as if to say, "Follow me." With a deep breath, Harry stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. The raven took flight, gliding silently through the station.